welcome to a brand new episode of the Traxion podcast. Joining us today is Justin. How are you, Justin?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, really good. I'm the host for this one, Tom. And today we're going to be talking about esports. And just before we do, esports is very popular. We know over the past 18 months, 2 years, it's grown in popularity. But there is also a lot of people that just play racing games or sims and they don't watch the live races, or they're not too bothered, or they might only watch it when it's on a TV channel on old-fashioned methods, right? So this is what we're going to do here, is sort of discuss why we think it's really enjoyable, what trends we've seen, and also, you know, has it just been a bubble during the pandemic or not, as the case might be. Sound good, Justin?
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to this entire podcast.
Nice. Well, we should say that Justin's been around. You've been around the esports scene for many years, right? And commentating, and also doing sort of community management tasks on esports competitions, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've done primarily the big thing that people would know me from is F1 Esports. I've done other smaller things that people might know me from as well. But yeah, the main thing is F1 Esports, specifically the Challenger series, the feeder series, you know, that prior to the draft of the Pro Series. And yeah, I've been a part of that since the very start in 2017. So 5 seasons, cool. 4 years. Exactly. 5 seasons, 4 years in total with F1 Esports specifically. But yeah, I've done other things as well too. But it has been, as you said, the last 18 months have been enormous. I would say potentially even more growth in the last 18 months than we had seen to that date in history so far.
I would agree with that. And while the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still ongoing, is terrible and lots of people are being affected, different governments have handled different things and all sorts of things like this, esports has been an area to benefit from it. I suppose every cloud has a silver lining for some people. And for me, what really spurred it on, you might disagree with this, was when real motorsport, let's say, couldn't do events or was compromised. And so a lot of last minute tournaments and championships or invitational races were put on in 2020 to plug a gap, I guess.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it needed that. Motorsport needed to bridge that gap between the real life stuff and the digital stuff. And I think motorsport as a whole, not just Formula One, but motorsport as a whole, is potentially the area that stood to gain the most from that. Because I think a lot more people are interested in seeing Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc race each other in a game on a wheel versus, say, 2 footballers playing FIFA together. I mean, I'm not saying that wouldn't be enjoyable, but I'm just saying the transfer of skills is completely different and separate.
Right. Because you can have these extremely detailed simulating platforms and also steering wheels and pedals, which are analogous to real life equipment. Okay, the feeling's not going to be the same. That's a big debate. But it's closer to, I don't know, watching someone play a PGA golf game, or like you say, or something like this, right? So that gives you more connection. And there was some really amazing stuff. It was mostly amazing stuff. There were some growing pains, I would say, as well. When real racing drivers were like, "Oh, this is not like the real thing." Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I know, but it's as close as you can get.
People not taking it seriously, or taking it too seriously.
Yeah. The drivers not taking it too seriously. Let's just touch upon that. Actually, that's a really good point. You know, they're spinning around, they're crashing, they're driving the wrong way around the track. They're thinking it's a funny laugh because they're one of the privileged few who have the ability or access to the real race cars, right? But for an audience, you just want to see a good close race because. Spinning around and crashing, you know, you could play Mario Kart or watch someone on YouTube if you wanted, or do whatever you want. You know? We're here for a competition. And when the competition is good, that's when the esports is the best, I think.
That's right. And it often is very good. I will say that about esports over the regular thing, because of how quickly they can react to things, how quickly things can change. It just gives a little bit of a benefit to esports. They're able to do things like, you know, balance the performance of vehicles or change the format of the racing or the broadcast really quite easily and quickly. I mean, it's not, you know, as simple as just making the decision. There's still a little bit of work involved, but it's a lot less of a logistical nightmare compared to attempting to change something that's fundamental about a motorsport like NASCAR or F1 or IndyCar or WEC or whatever it might be.
I think because of that as well, you tend to get closer grids. Now, there's often the case where someone is dominant. Look at Honor House in Formula Pro Series this year, or Moritz Lohner in ADAC GT Masters Esports. But still, the field is close. If you look at the results, you're like, oh, they're dominating. But it's not easy. But because you can have, like you say, balanced performance, or just the same car, or fixed setups, there's the opportunity there to not have, let's say, Lewis Hamilton in his most dominant seasons, or Schumacher, for that example, where the race is kind of over at the start.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is they might seem dominant by esports standards, but actually by real racing standards, it's actually pretty tame. I mean, cast your mind back to the mid 2010s when Lewis and Nico were pretty much just racing each other to find out who was going to win every race in Formula One. It was pretty bland in that regard. It was just such a big gap between one team and the rest of the teams. And you do see that. You do see dominant performances like Bono House in Formula Pro Series. That was also the first one that was coming to my mind when you mentioned domination in esports, because it really has been incredible. 4 for 4, I think 2 for 4 when it comes to pole positions. But he really, and also he's not a young guy either. Bono's been around for years.
I think he's a 5-time champion in another R-Factor.
Formula Sim Racing, FSR.
Yeah, that's it, FSR. So, yeah, you're right. He's been around the block. And I'm sure when he was doing those races as well, but it wasn't like he was lapping everybody in the field, right?
Right.
And the other thing is the professionalism, I feel, has dramatically increased, especially this year, in my opinion, because the professional esports teams have really stepped up a gear in terms of their communication on social media. There are still opinions out there, but the crazy outbursts and stuff are not really happening as much as they used to do. And I think the reason for this is there is a lot more sponsorship than ever, and it doesn't have to have like a real motorsport star already in there to get that. If you just want to watch the best racing, those series are popular. Therefore, it brings in the sponsors.
Yeah. There was, I won't name names, but there was one particular F1 esports driver who was a bit caustic on social media for a while. But then after that initial season of Formula One, when the sponsors started to come in and when the real teams started to come in as well. So the first season of F1 esports, for example, the real teams weren't involved in any way whatsoever. There was no draft per se or anything like that. I think people were just kind of assigned cars, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. That was over 4 years ago at this point. But the real life teams weren't involved in stuff like that. So the drivers were a little bit, more aggressive and free is a good word to say whatever they wanted on social media. Which is, comes with both pros and cons, right? Yeah. Certainly I think it's good for people to speak their mind and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's also good to see people maturing a little bit. And the driver that I have in mind, people may be thinking of the same driver potentially in their head. Again, I don't want to name names, but pretty much overnight, it feels completely changed his attitude towards social media and the other drivers on the grid and stuff like that. And I think that sort of stuff is quite beneficial. You see F1 drivers being very, very mature. You do see the odd,
There's
silliness and stuff like that.
To the rule, right?
Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, they're very aware that they're in the public eye and they're thinking about how things will be perceived and stuff like that. And I think very much so that has been translated over into the world of esports, not just with F1, but as a whole. I agree. Yeah. I think you're right. I think sponsorship and just, real life teams being involved, things becoming very official is what's sort of helping that to happen.
Yeah, I think Red Bull Racing Esports is a really good example because it's Red Bull's dedicated esports team. So first of all, that's a big commitment from a huge brand. Mm-hmm. They've signed many drivers who are specialists in many different sim racing platforms, F1, R-Factor, Race Room, and many others. And then they've got a sponsor or a partner, as they would call it, for basically every facet of sim racing. Mm-hmm. So there's a specialist
wheel.
PC builder, the wheelbase, the seat, play seat, Fanatec, merchandise for the clothing.
Monitors are big. I see like
they've got a
BenQ,
monitor, and they've got a
Acer,
headset.
Asus. Yep.
Yeah, and Red Bull isn't anyone. Like every esports team, that's how effectively they're working. They want to get some good results, good exposure to a targeted, perhaps more useful, but certainly engaged audience, and that's good value for the sponsorships, right? And if everyone's behaving well, putting a good show, being professional about it, then that's a good example of not the future of esports, but how it is now and how much more professional it's become. Because
and certainly
a lot more money is involved.
And you're right about that. And certainly, it's just things have changed over the years in the esports scene. And yeah, I do think it is overall for the better. I would say things are in a better place. Certainly, I think it's great that the drivers are being compensated better, as you said, with better pay structures and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, because it takes 12 hours a day to practice if you want to be top level. That's what some people are doing. It's a full-time job. So there needs to be this structure in place so that people can make a career of it, to give viewers a better spectacle, right? Or for it to be less amateur. So there has to be this balance of professionalism and sponsorship, because that enables people to choose this as a career option, a genuine career option. Especially when you look at, I don't think sim racing is as cheap as it can be, because if you add up a lot of the expensive equipment, it's not affordable. But certainly, it's a lot cheaper than real motorsport. I don't want to say it's better than real motorsport. I'm not saying that, but there is a subset of people now who literally just don't care about that, and they're trying to just do esports as their main career path, which is a huge step forward.
And I always thought that was going to happen. It's a natural progression I remember there was lots of discussion as well too. About there was a time anyway at one point where it seemed like every esports championship, the goal was to like get into real motorsport, to get like a real drive, to get a shot at an actual real life seat in motorsport
GT
somewhere.
Academy style and all this.
Exactly. And I do think that rather rightfully, that trend is starting to get bucked a little bit. Just on the topic of how much things have changed in terms of payment and stuff like that, because we touched on that, I did a check because obviously here at Traxion, we are the English broadcasters for the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship.
It's a mouthful, but well done. You did it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You type it enough times on social media and you start to memorize it. And certainly I had never seen it before. It was brand new when it came to Traxion. It was brand new to me. I'd never experienced it before. I was really surprised by that €100,000 prize pool because that is a huge amount of money. That is a lot closer to what you would see from like League of Legends, Call of Duty, Rocket League, you know what I mean? From like a high end top level esports that isn't necessarily related to sim racing. And I was curious what it had been like up until now, or leading up until now. And it was about half, I believe, last time. But the real shocker was in 2019, pre-COVID, the ADAC Esports Championship prize pool was €5,000. Right. €5,000, 1/20th of this year's prize pool, and that's after only 2 years. Now, that I don't think that in 2 years it's going to be a €2 million prize pool. I'm not saying that,
but there's accelerated growth, right?
Exactly, and it's stuck around, even though I think sort of that initial shine has worn off, because as we were talking about early days, you had these celebrities coming in and playing video games. Because
the IndyCar stuff, virtual GPs.
Exactly. You had all these people, coming in and just having a good time. When they started to go away, there was a worry that we were just going to go right back to where we were.
Correct.
But that has not happened at all. I mean, you look at we started covering PSGL on our.
I was going to mention this.
Absolutely enormous numbers, and that's just from a league. That's not even from an official esports.
Yes, Premier Sim Gaming Leagues, I think is what it is, right? And it's an independent YouTube channel and league started on PlayStation, and anyone can sign up and qualify, and then you're put into different groups.
Tiers.
Tiers. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Tiers. And over 50,000 people watched their first round of the PC season 29, which have just started on their YouTube channel. And that's mad because remember, we are in the midst of a real Formula One season, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like filling in a gap. Oh, there's no races on. No. And
no,
there was no, Lewis Hamilton wasn't racing.
No.
Max Verstappen wasn't racing. It was, okay, F1 esports drivers predominantly, but they're esports professionals. They're not real racing drivers. And that to me just showed that the audience has stuck around. That, yes, these celebrity races have sort of dwindled and died away, and they were popular because a lot of those viewership numbers were on terrestrial or Sky or cable television, right? So that inflates the figures a bit. But if you look at the online community, PSGL is a really good example, I think, like you said, of something that has carried that success and actually got record numbers this year, even though the big bubble was supposedly last year.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't that long ago either. And again, this is speaking as somebody who's been around since day one of F1 esports. It wasn't that long ago. It was only a few years ago that every single F1 esports driver on Twitter had maybe 1,000 followers. Right. Very likely less. And we're talking even
my
like
level
champions, like people that had won the championship with around about the number of followers that you or I have, or somebody who's just been on Twitter for a very long time and stuff like that. And nowadays it's absolutely enormous. And I mean, I think Jarno Opmeer, I think, is kind of the poster boy for F1 esports these days. He's a world champion. He's signed for Mercedes, which is obviously a champion in their own right as well too. And he's pulling in, I think I saw him tweet not that long ago that he had done a stream where he pulled in 10,000 live viewers on his stream. And a lot of times he'll be streaming his point of view of PSGL. So when you factor that in, PSGL's numbers are actually way, way bigger than what we're initially thinking, because there are so many people tuning in to watch. And it's not just him as well, too. Like every driver or many of the drivers will broadcast their point of view. Lucas Blakely, Josh Idawo. I mean, a lot of the drivers will broadcast. And so when you add all those numbers together, I think it's probably over 100,000, tuning in live and stuff. It's just absolutely insane. So, but yeah, I think Jarno Opmeer really has been, kind of the standard for everybody else to sort of aspire to. But it's just absolutely insane to see the way that all of these guys have grown, not just, the guys that are winning the championship.
A lot of them are active on social media, but they also do their own Twitch streams. They might have their own YouTube channels. And that just helps grow a fan base. They have got these professional esports drivers have got fan bases for that driver.
Big time.
For those who don't know, it's not just like, oh, I'm a fan of this series. If you think of a rail Formula One driver or NASCAR driver or WRC driver, and they'll have a fan base, right? So do the esports drivers, more and more. Some of them have their own merchandise ranges and all this. When it gets to selling T-shirts, you've reached a certain level, right? So.
Yep, I've seen Marcel Kiefer retweeting people that are wearing his merch and stuff like that, and
Red
I'm just
Bull
like,
Racing Esports, I've got the merch. Yeah,
I'm blown away, and it's good stuff as well too.
Yeah, I just think that's another sign again, as I've said already, just how established this is becoming. And we're recording this off the back of the news that the Le Mans Virtual has expanded or is returning. So for those who don't know, this was a 24-hour event last year in lieu of the rail 24 hours of Le Mans. Pandemic was kicking off and everything.
Real racing drivers and stuff in last year's.
Exactly, correct. And big success at the last minute. 40.2 million people reached across broadcast TV and the internet. So it didn't happen so far this year because Rail WC is back on. 24 Hours Le Mans just happened. Toyota won it. Jose Maria Lopez won. I'm a big fan. But now it's returning, and there's going to be a series on the run-up to. So there's going to be 4 endurance races, and then it's going to end in the big 24-hour race, which is going to be also at the Autosport International, so in person. We don't know the driver lineup, but I would hesitate to guess it's going to be pretty spectacular. And so here's something that the ACO, who organizes the 24-hour Le Mans, has said, wow, that was such a success. We're going to expand upon it into 2022 and 2021. So, far from a one-off thing. And so I'm really, really looking forward to it. Obviously, I know I'm biased, right? Because coverage is going to be live on Traxion. But come on. When the ACO is getting involved, that's a very high order for me because they've got one of the most prestigious rail races in the world.
Yeah, I am hugely optimistic about the new virtual Le Mans series and the next 24-hour virtual endurance race as well too. Because it was an absolute blast. I helped out with social media stuff on it last year.
Okay.
And really had a lot of fun just watching and immersing myself in it and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of Le Mans. I'm not a hardcore fan. I'll be the first to admit that.
Well, 24-hour race is hard to watch live. That's
exactly. I have never once stayed up for the full 24 hours in order to watch it. I just don't have. I just don't have the energy, or really the free time. I guess you need a 24 hours where you have nothing else really going on in your life, or stuff that can be delayed. And I haven't run into that, but. My hopes are very high for the 24 hours of Milan. I mean, I think for a first go last year was an absolutely incredible. I mean, it really opened up my eyes, I think, to what, virtual racing broadcasts can be like. Because it had the assistance of the broadcasters for the real life Le Mans, so you had video game experts working together with real life motorsport experts to bring you a motorsport in a video game broadcast. Hard to explain, but
I know what you mean.
Oh my God, it was so good. I mean, I am biased, but I feel like I would have been a huge fan either way.
We're gonna fly that because you can watch every race live on the Traxion YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitch, and we'll hopefully be doing some driver interviews and stuff like this as well. So really stay tuned. But it comes from the heart, right? And this is why we're kind of getting involved, because the last year's result at the last minute was amazing. So now what's it going to be?
Imagine
the full series and all the prep, So looking forward to that. And it's not just Le Mans that gives esports further credence this year, without the need for. We keep saying it, but celebrity races, for example, like the IndyCar, Cyber Pagino, Lando Norris debate, it is that the car manufacturers are still just as committed. PESC Racing, the Porsche Esports Super Cup is coming back with a new format which will enable more people to get involved with a better qualification system. And I think some of those races will also be broadcast live before the main ones as well. So there'll be more of that. And then you've got Lamborghini and Ferrari still continuing with their esports series. And in the case of Ferrari, doubling down. So like this year, the prize is to become a Ferrari, like a paid Ferrari driver. Okay, virtual racing, but a paid Ferrari driver.
Can you imagine?
I know, right? And you get to go the training in Maranello, COVID rules dependent, and all this sort of stuff. So, for me, as being a car nerd, Ferrari can often be a bit of a laggard when it comes to new things. Yeah. And here they are going, no, we're going to have our own esports series. We're going to run it. It's in Assetto Corsa, the first one. Bit weird. But at least they're doing it, and Lamborghini. And Ford has an esports team that's still going, right?
Yeah, Fordzilla.
And they just had a stream at Gamescom to say, look at this futuristic car, and here's our team, and all this amazing stuff. So it's not just sponsorship and existing Formula 1 teams that have spin-off teams, it's car manufacturers as well, and then the independents that get sponsorship. So working all together, I feel like it's still in the best place it's ever been. There's just this sort of top level of rail racing drivers messed about that's missing, which I feel like I've repeated to myself a lot now. But that's my opinion of esports at the minute. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I think the real life drivers kind of did their job. Like I said before, it really felt
Thanks
like
so much.
Exactly. They bridged that gap. They opened that door to so many people being able to appreciate sim racing. And I feel like, we were just early. The people that are coming in now, they would have liked it 5 years ago too, if they had given it a shot, but they weren't given that opportunity. It took a global pandemic, 100-year pandemic. With a really shocking, loss of life and impact to the economy and so many other things and stuff like that. But it took something that big to really swing the door wide open. And I feel like sim racing has really caught up to other forms of gaming esports as a result of this. So
Yeah.
I feel like in the pandemic, yes, there was benefits, you know, if for like League of Legends and Call of Duty or Smash, you know,
FIFA.
I assume every esport benefited from the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I think sim racing benefited more than the rest, possibly because it was lagging a little bit behind, you know, so it had a bigger gap to the ceiling, you could say, to catch back up to where the kind of mainstream video game esports stuff is at. But that's exactly what happened. You know, we're still not quite at the same level. It's a niche within a niche, which will always make things a little bit difficult. You know, the headline stuff is always going to be, you know, the Call of Duties and those kinds of things, the things that have millions and millions and millions of players. But also, you know, we haven't even touched on this, but it's been a big year for motorsport video games in terms of like EA buying Codemasters and now throwing the might of Electronic Arts
and basically they bought that for Formula One, right?
Exactly. And it's not just a racing game, it's a racing game company. This is a company that makes multiple racing games and franchises and stuff. So I feel like, you know, there's even kind of background stuff like that that's been going on recently that's really just helped pave the way.
Yeah, and also, that's such a good point, actually. I didn't think about the business behind it from the game publishing point of view. And while it wasn't explicit at the time, Formula One is used for PSGL, community leagues. It has an inbuilt league system, an online play if you want to play with your mates without streaming it. You've got the virtual Grand Prix, which is like real F1 drivers mixed with some personalities. And then you've got F1 Esports challenges that you commentated on and the Pro Series. So there's a huge amount of esports involved in the promotion of that game and use of that game. And people who just play that game for esports as their career, as we've said. And EA went, oh yeah, we'll have a bit of that and we'll buy out for, was it $1 billion? I think it was
something like that. Yeah, it was a shocking number.
Oh. They certainly didn't buy it for the Fast and Furious game. Anyway, less said about that, the better. But and so that's a big testament to things and how they've evolved and how they'll. I think with EA behind it, that's going to only be a good thing as well to push the online functionality of the game and the visuals and maybe it's going to go to Frostbite engine. Who knows in the future? That can only be a good thing, right? And
actually, I do have some more numbers that I pulled up specifically about F1 Esports because I've been so involved since 2017. And this is based purely on Twitch VOD numbers, but I feel like Twitch VOD numbers actually give you a pretty good representation of how popular something is. If you go check out twitch.tv/Formula One, just twitch.tv/Formula One,
the main
you can
F1
see
channel.
Exactly. You can see the VODs for the 2021 Challenger Series, which I was one of the commentators for. Yeah. Exactly. And those VODs are getting anywhere from like 20 to 40,000 views or have 20 to 40,000 views on Twitch, which is huge. That's absolutely fantastic. It's actually round about the same number of views that they were getting for the Pro Series towards the end of 2020. And so that was still in COVID time. So that's comparing a pandemic series, feeder series, to a pandemic top level series. So it's not even comparing, you know, pre-pandemic to during the pandemic. We're, you know, last year that was during the pandemic. That was still kind of the height of F1 Esports and all that kind of stuff. We haven't started the Pro Series for 2021 just yet. I've completely forgotten when that starts.
Well, I don't think it's official yet. We would estimate October, November, but the whole all the driver lineups have not been announced yet. The race format has not been announced at the full calendar. So I'm excited for it, and I do think it'll maybe be the most successful one they've had yet. But that's still the numbers you've shown there shows how popular.
And that's with a game that's receiving a lot of criticism from the F1 Esports drivers as well too. I am kind of interested to see how that works out because, of course, the Challenger Series was done on F1 2020. The Pro Series will be done on F1 2021, which while the game is very highly reviewed, everybody seems to love it and stuff like that. Exactly. The F1 Esports drivers are very critical of that game and the problems that it might have and all of that kind of stuff. If you played it 12
hours a day, you're going to find more than most, right?
Very, very true. Very, very true.
So we've played it more than game testers there. So
exactly. So, but the main thing to think of, those numbers, 20 to 40,000 for last year's Pro Series, this year's Challenger Series. You know, we may even get close to 100,000 for this year's Pro Series. A couple of years ago in 2019, the same Challenger series, it was called something slightly different back then, but the same feeder series, the VODs on Twitch were pulling about 2,000 views. So 1/10 to 1/20th, which is also similar because remember ADAC, it was 1/20th 2 years ago as well. So again, I'm not saying that we're going to have 20 times as many viewers in 2 years and 20 times as much prize money, but I'm just saying it really goes to show the growth that we've had since pre-pandemic has been
and the sustainability this year, right?
Yeah.
Now that okay, the pandemic is still ongoing. Let's stress that in different forms. Some of us are privileged to be in countries where the vaccine has been rolled out, but there are other countries like Australia, New Zealand, who are back in a strict lockdown, right? And despite that, all these numbers are still trending upwards for the professional or semi-professional esports series. And the Challenger series reminds me of perhaps one of our main final points, I would say, of this particular podcast episode. Other than, please just go watch some esports if you've not. If you watched it on TV and then
it's really good.
Yeah, get back into it. If you play racing, find a series in it, even a community one, and watch some stuff. But there's enough of it on YouTube. I think one area that has progressed a lot has been the route to the top leagues, or top championships. So Challenges is a good series that's been around for a while. I think we see more championships that have like these pro esport teams and drivers at the top. But how do I get into it, right? Is it still elitist? But there's more sort of Challenger series where anyone can compete to get onto that grid by just doing online time trials in the game, like in R-Factor 2 or the Formula 1, for example. And then if you do well in that series, you then get the drive for the Pro Series next year, which is what PESC and iRace is doing this year. It's opening up the more time trials to more people. So there is still, like rail sport, a bit of elitism, well, kind of at the top, where you get signed to a pro team and then you might be locked into that championship. But then some series have like a relegation process. If like Formula Pro Series, on a team basis, if you finish at the bottom, you're out of the Pro Series and then you're booted into Challengers for the next year, right? Erhan Yoyoski in GT Pro was unfortunately relegated. He's now in Challenge and doing very well in GT Challenge this year, so he might get promoted back in again. And these sort of systems, I think, will evolve further. But it's also something that now has been learnt about, and they're getting better at the approachability aspect, I think.
Yeah, and just on a personal note, I would like to see F1 do more. Like, I would like to see them do an F2 championship, for example. Maybe take all the drivers that didn't get picked by a team from the Challenger series, and just throw them into in the same game. So it's still F1 2021, but you just have everyone pick F2 cars. It's a very different sort of challenge. The only downside with that, though, is the top level drivers don't want to drive multiple cars. They only want to drive
focus.
Exactly. If you jump from one car to one car, or worse, one game to another game, you run the risk of losing that feel, that muscle memory and stuff like that. Right. And a lot, it's very rare, but you do have those drivers such as James Baldwin. I feel like he is the jack of all trades that people love to mention, where you can be good at multiple games, but James Baldwin, I don't think has ever won, aside from World's Fastest Gamer, he's never won like F1 Esports or
he won the British GT Esports Championship this year in a Assetto Corsa Competizione.
Okay.
But not the GT World SRO World Challenge Esports Series, although that's still ongoing. But you're right. Your point still stands.
Right.
I'm with you.
Most drivers
didn't win F1 Esports.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I've got an example of two multi-talented drivers, which I've just been thinking about today, actually. One is Kevin Ziggy.
I was just thinking Kevin Ziggy.
For Team Redline.
Yeah,
now,
he's everywhere these days.
Going, but he does like Formula Pro on a Monday, then ADAC GT,
which is race room,
which is on race room the next day, and then he's back in R-Factor 2, but in GT cars for GT Pro as well. I'm like, my word. He probably does some more stuff that I'm not aware of, right? And
he did the Formula E. He did the Formula E stuff as well.
He did the Formula E Accelerate. Yep, absolutely. And then there's an independent driver. I think he was formerly Williams Esports, Isaac Price, who just won the sprint race of ADAC GT Masters at Lausitzring, the last round. And then kind of on the same day, but kind of not, he won the Ferrari Esports round as well, which is in Assetto Corsa. And the only reason I say on the same day is because Ferrari Esports is a weird one where it's recorded 3 days before it's broadcast.
Oh, I see.
So it was
Okay.
broadcast at the
So
same
you
day.
watched
So he won
him.
2 races at the same time. It was really weird. How was he doing that?
That is incredible.
Yeah. But so and he hasn't got an esports team at the minute. He's just doing it on his own, but doing well in the Ferrari esports and ADAC at the you know.
And he's former F1 esports as well. So
right.
just kind of drives absolutely everything. Again, it's very, very difficult to be, at the very top, but it seems, certainly there are some people that can do that. And certainly I think that does help people to become a full-time sim racing professional driver. You know what I mean? To ensure that you're doing enough to get paid so that it can be your sort of full-time job.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, while if you're not an esports professional, like let's say me or you, we can play multiple games and think we're quite good. Mm-hmm. I've beaten the single player campaign. I've got a good leaderboard time. The level is way higher.
Yeah.
But what you can do if you want to try and get into it is try these multiple different platforms, multiple different wheels, different cars, tracks within the platforms, find your niche. And that I would say you'd focus on that, and then you can start qualifying for things and get into it. All right. Well, thanks so much. I think that just about wraps it up. I think the gist of what we're saying is that there wasn't really a bubble last year because things have still sustained or even increased for professional level esports. Yeah. Is that a fair assumption?
I think so. Yeah. I think there was a little bit of a bubble, then a little bit of a deflate, but now we're back to where we were before, maybe even higher.
It's like the foundations have grown. No, that's a terrible analogy. But anyway, on that note, I think we should wrap it up because I'm losing my mind. Essentially, and we said it already, go watch
check out some esports. Big time.
Find your favorite game or sim platform or
driver
sport or driver, team, sponsor, whatever.
Yeah.
Give it a watch. You don't necessarily have to watch it live because most of it's on catch up on Twitch and YouTube as well, or even Facebook. Some series do highlights videos. You can just watch that. Like for real motorsport, I try and watch a load of it, but most of it I will watch the series when it puts like the 5-minute highlight video, just so I can get a gist of it, and then you get into it. So I would check out those as well. Of course, there are a load of live esports on the Traxion YouTube channel, but that's a bit
you don't say.
And we're not actually here for that. We're talking about our genuine passion. But keep your eyes peeled on the TraxionGG YouTube channel. We'll have all sorts coming out. I hope to have something about the WRC World Rally Championship esports finale soon, but there's a lot of FAA regulations about COVID that we need to work our way through to get there. But if I'm there, I hope to record something with the drivers. There might be a special podcast. If not, at the very least, there's going to be an article. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Otherwise, thank you very much. Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Justin.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
We've got some exciting things for the podcast coming up as well. So please do follow or subscribe to the podcast. It's free. It just alerts you to whenever there's a new episode. It helps our podcast out if you're listening on audio platforms like Spotify, Apple, Pocket Cast, Google, or if you're just listening on YouTube. Like and subscribe, of course. But what we'd like to know on this topic is comment below on YouTube or the website with your favorite esports series. What have you enjoyed? What have you not enjoyed? And then we might do something on the website, which is TraxionGG, about what our community likes or doesn't like about esports, how it needs to evolve. Quick plug as well. There's a great article about Monday Night Racing, which is like an independent iRacing league that Justin Malello, who writes for Traxion, he partakes in. So that gave me a really good idea of the passion behind it. So check that out. And that's a lot of plugging. I apologize. Let's go. Let's call it quits. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it pinned.